I always felt like the underdog,
Mm-hmm.
always like the runner-up. Running for class president, came in second. Running the 440 or the 880, like it was always those seconds. And I never felt like discouraged by it, but I had this mindset that I'm the underdog, so I have to work harder than anybody else.
Today's guest is a leader who has reshaped how executive and teams think about performance, culture, and leadership through one powerful force, curiosity. Dr. Debra Clary is the founder and CEO of the Clary Group, where she helps leaders, teams, and boards improve results by replacing certainty with disciplined curiosity, a framework she calls the curiosity curve, like at the book in hand. Her career began on the loading docks at 4 a.m., driving a Frito-Lay route truck through Detroit winters. That experience shaped her belief that credibility is built through discipline, ownership, and doing the work when no one is looking. Over the next 3 years, Debra rose into senior leadership roles at some of the most recognized organizations in the world, including Coca-Cola, Jack Daniels, Papa John's, and Humana. At Humana, she founded the Leadership Institute, developed top executives, and led enterprise-wide leadership onboarding and performance initiatives in a high-stakes, mission-driven industry. After decades inside corporate America, Debra sensed something critical was missing in how leaders operate under pressure. She commissioned MIT, I think those are pretty smart guys, MIT to study the relationship between curiosity and performance, uncovering a direct correlation that ultimately led her to leave corporate life and focus full-time on curiosity as a leadership advantage. Debra is award-winning and best-selling author, a viral TEDx speaker, and the author of The Curiosity Curve, which launched with Fast Company in October of 2025. Before we dive in, do not forget to like, share, and smash the subscribe button, Zach, to the Matthews Mentality Podcast. Debra, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for driving down from beautiful Louisville.
It's my pleasure.
Louisville. How do you pronounce it? Louisville? Louisville. Yeah, I'm still learning. But coming down to Nashville, it's a little chilly out. Let's dive right in. I got this lovely book, The Curiosity Curve. This is your first book you wrote?
Yes.
And tell us about the book.
Yeah, so the book is based on my 4 decades of experience in Fortune 50 companies, but it all kind of began in like 2019. And when I began to see what was happening in corporations, and I was kind of wondering what was missing. As you've said, I'd worked for Fortune 50 companies, navigated complex systems, and 3 things happened to me within a matter of a couple of weeks. It was a joke, a question, and a puzzle. So I was on a train from Rome to Florence, taking a little vacation, and I was sitting next to, was a very handsome Italian man, Emilio, and he says to me, "Are you American?" And I said, "Why? Yes, I am. I'm American."
How do you know?
Yeah. And he says, "I had a great American joke." He said, "What do you get when you ask an American a question?"
I don't know.
An answer.
An answer.
He thought it was so funny. He was laughing, and the people on the trains turned around and what's happening here? And I didn't find the joke amusing. But as I began to spend time in Florence, I started watching Europeans and Italians in conversation. They weren't answering questions like Americans did. They were in conversation. So I thought, oh, this is really interesting. So that was the joke. So I go back to work, sitting in the boardroom next to my CEO. Somebody was presenting, and he leans over and quietly asked, "Do you think that curiosity can be learned, or is it innate?" I said, "I don't know." So it took a week or so. I did some research. I came back and said, "Oh, by the way, Bruce, curiosity can be learned." And he's like, "What?" I go, "That question you asked me in the boardroom."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, okay, that's really great." So I thought, curiosity can be learned. And then at the end of that week, Gallup, who measures engagement across organizations, reported in the history of measuring engagement, the lowest score ever.
For curiosity.
For engagement.
Oh, engagement. Yeah, just paying attention in a sense. Yeah.
Right. So now I had a joke, a question, and a puzzle. So I had a hypothesis that what was missing was curiosity. Now that's a really, that's way out there. People think of curiosity as Curious George, you're going down a rabbit hole, or maybe this is something for kids. And so I just took it seriously. And so I commissioned these trained MIT researchers to answer a question. And I said, I want to know if there's a relationship between leadership, performance, and curiosity. 3 months later, they came back and said, how do you know? How did you know this? And I said, 3 decades in corporate America, navigating really complex, thorny issues and systems. It led me to believe that that was true. And so once we had that evidence, then we went deeper in our research. And the point is that curiosity drives performance.
And so that was 2019. That ultimately led into you kind of, I guess, evolving what your focus was professionally and developing the Clary Group and focusing on curiosity. Then ultimately the book. When did you know let me jump to the last part of that. When did you know you wanted to write a book about it?
So it was probably like in 2022 when we got all the data back. Now I'm still working full time, but on the side, I'm doing this hobby, so to speak, this research and thinking about it. And I just felt that called to go do the work around curiosity and to make it, people understand that it's a capability, it's a competency. It's not a soft skill. It's not a nice to have, but that through curiosity, we could drive out pain in organizations with employees not feeling seen, heard, or valued, which is what Gallup is telling us, but also shift the trend on performance. So that's when I said, I think I want to take this seriously. And that was in 2022. So I give my company notice that I'm going to leave, and I gave a year's notice. So that allows me to have parallel paths, right?
So
Still have income
kind.
here, and I'm going to go do this work.
I wish we had a year. We get 2 weeks usually, You can't do anything in 2 weeks.
No, you really cannot. But something crazy happened to me is during COVID, I was a part of a mastermind group of women, executive women across the country. And in August of 2022, they said, we're coming to Louisville because we have something to celebrate.
Okay.
Well, we like to celebrate in Louisville. We got good bourbon. I said, come on, we're going to celebrate. So we're sitting around drinking champagne and bourbon. And they said, we're celebrating Deb. I didn't do anything yet. I didn't do anything yet. And they go, no, we forgot to tell you. I said, tell me what? They go, your dream of doing a one-woman show? I go, yeah. They go, we pitched it to a producer in New York and you're booked.
Wow.
And I'm like, no, you're not my friends. I'm not doing this. I've got this whole idea of writing the book. I'm going to get out there. They go, no, you're already booked in New York. So I did a one-woman show off Broadway. We sold out, and it was called A Curious Woman. And the play was it was a comedy, but it was about my life being a woman in the 80s and 90s and navigating corporations, from the route driver, and then how do I get to the corporate boardroom? And it was wild and fun.
Oh, I bet.
But it was just this.
And that was always a lifelong dream of yours.
It was, when I was growing up, that was my dream. But my parents were like, "No, you have to go into business.
You can't make money doing it.
You can't make money. You were like that." And I remember my father, who loved me greatly, said, "You're just not that funny, right? So you need to go to business school."
He probably thought he was doing something kind by saying that.
Absolutely true. And so, in terms of, am I funny enough to be a full-time stand-up comic? No, but I can do a one-woman show where it's storytelling about my life, but also it's funny.
That's great. Hey, Zach, when we produce this episode, I want you to splice in some clips of the show, okay?
Yes, I'd be happy to send those to you.
Yeah, send them over. But all right, so the show's about your life. Let's go through that.
Mm-hmm.
You're from Michigan?
Yes.
What were you like as a kid? I mean, not that funny, right? That's what your dad said?
Yeah. Well, he didn't tell me that till I was much older. Okay. So as a kid, I kept thinking I was funny.
No, I was going to say, were you like class clown kid?
No, not at all. Okay. Not at all. But I think, for me, as growing up in a middle-class family, I had 2 brothers. Athleticism was really important in our family, and education was really important. And So all of those things of all the wonderful environment I had, I always felt like the underdog, always like the runner up, running for class president, came in second, running the 440 or the 880, like it was always those seconds. And I never felt like discouraged by it, but I had this mindset that I'm the underdog, so I have to work harder than anybody else.
Did you develop a little chip on your shoulder?
I didn't have a chip on my shoulder, but it was said, this is the lot in life. So it just means I have to work smarter and
you didn't go into any situation based on your experience as a kid, assuming that you'd be the most talented. And so you said, look, in order for me to win, I just got to outwork everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In football, they call it like a walk-on mentality.
Yeah. Well, it's like you look at Tom Brady. You know Tom Brady? I bet you know Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yes.
And you look at his story. I don't know him, but I only know what I read about him. You think about this, comes out of the University of Michigan. He's all excited. He's sitting in there in the draft.
Yeah.
It's got to be so amazing. And 198 people are called before you.
Yeah.
The man's an underdog.
Yeah.
And
it definitely gave him a lot of fuel. And to this day, I think it's still a visceral reaction if you ask him about the draft. And he could probably name all the quarterbacks ahead, but I think it worked out okay for him.
Absolutely. And when I look at him, he had this incredible discipline and the ability to say, all right, if I don't have this skill, I can develop another skill that's still going to get us to the win.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's great. He's just too good looking. It bothers me. He's too
I can get that too.
I can deal with the fact how much money he made. He's the best quarterback. I get it. Like, God bless. I'm happy for him. But then you're like, but he's good looking too. Like, that's not fair. You're not allowed.
His hair, he's got nice, good hair.
Not allowed to have it all.
Too. Well, you have nice hair too.
But his is not really nice.
His really nice.
So anyway, and one of the funny things about Tom, his draft picture, if you look at him and then you look at him now, he's actually better looking today than he was at the draft. And I think that's probably why he fell. But it is a great example, and it does create a chip on your shoulder certainly. But for you, getting back to always just being one step short, that's what you assign, kind of that hustle, that tenacity you approached your career with? Yeah. It wasn't something your dad or your mom sat you down and said, this is what you have to do? No,
it was just one of keep trying, get back out there.
So let's start at the beginning of your professional journey. My understanding is you started as a truck driver for Frito-Lay at doing 4 a.m. shifts. Like you have to walk me through what that's like.
So you think about this.
First of all, how do you even have the role? And again, I feel like that's not a role a lot of women end up taking. Am I wrong?
There were a few.
Okay.
There were a few.
Okay.
But no one with an MBA. So for me, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. I went on to business school, tons of hope, aspirations.
Yeah.
My parents were so proud. And I went to an interview at Frito-Lay. Now, I thought I was interviewing for a manager role.
Okay.
I was so cute. I had this suit on, a little bow tie.
You were ready.
I smelled good.
Yeah.
I was like ready. And
let's go.
It ended up that they did offer me the job, but it was being a Frito-Lay route driver, being a Teamster, Local 336. And took me minutes to kind of process everything. And the question I asked is, are other women driving a truck? And they said, yes. And I said, can I ride with them tomorrow? I wanted to see what it was like. I just wanted to know physically, could I actually load the chips and unload the chips and how difficult that might be. And so I did that. I go, I got this. I can do this. And so I started. And, my parents, who were blue collar workers, they were just proud in a sense of you're starting at a huge organization. And so it entailed
great company, big company.
It was a great company owned by PepsiCo. The trajectory looked amazing.
Stable.
Yeah. And I asked, when I was out there for a couple of weeks, I said, what does it take to get off a truck and to become a manager? What do you need to see from me to make that happen? And they said, you have to increase your sales. You have to have one of the highest route averages within the district to get up. Didn't matter what kind of education I had. It didn't even matter how hard I worked. It mattered. We're going to be looking at your performance.
Yeah, just performance.
And so
That's
I
right.
figured out a way how to make that happen.
Well, I'm gonna touch on that in a second because I'm interested to hear how you did that. Let me go back. So you have an MBA.
Yes.
You're interviewing, and again, maybe the answer is simply you misunderstood the opening. But I got a question for you: is if you were a man with an MBA interviewing, like, could you show up as a guy with an MBA and you go straight to that manager route that you were
No,
hoping for?
they were starting everybody on a
Okay,
truck.
good. Okay,
Yep. So
yeah.
I had men up and down the dock that were in the same position that I was in.
That's great.
And they were trying to beat me, and I was trying to beat them in terms of route sales.
As you should. All right, so let's talk about performance as a truck driver is route time, you said?
It's sales.
Sales?
So how
And
many chips are you selling?
Okay, so I just made an assumption that you're a truck driver. You're just delivering what was sold by someone else.
No.
No, you're going around to what? Convenience stores, grocery stores? And
Grocery stores. So you had a set number of grocery stores on your route. So I had 7 stores, grocery stores. And, certainly they were buying our product already, but it was one about, can you sell another display? Can you get another couple of feet in the aisle? That was the kind of things that would increase your sales.
What was your pitch?
So I did something unique. So this is where I really learned about different roles within an organization. And in this case, it was in different stores. So the most important person for a route driver in a store is not the store manager,
Who is it?
the backdoor receiver.
Oh.
Because if he doesn't like you, he's not going to let you in.
Yeah.
And you're out there
It's
in
like
the
the
Michigan
executive,
Winners
yeah.
and you're ringing the buzzer and they're making you wait.
It's like the executive assistant. You got
That's the power. The positional power is the backdoor receiver.
Interesting.
And then the other thing I learned is they are measured on how well they keep the back room neat and orderly, right? So when I would say, hey, can I leave some back stock? They would say no, because they were measured on that. They thought I would not come back and put it up. It would just be sitting back there. So I built trust with them, the backdoor receiver, and they ended up giving me like pallets in the back room, because what I would do is on my off days, I would go in and put the back stock up.
Really?
Now, this was probably against union rules. I
Yeah.
didn't tell people that I was doing this, but I would go in and I would, in my street clothes, drive up in my car, go in, get it, put it up, get out, put it up, get out. And that's how I did it.
Let's see. Oh gosh. Okay. There's a lot I want to explore. First of all, like, how did you get him to like you right away? Before you even got to the opportunity to keep the back room clean, right? How did you get him to, and this might not even just be a metaphor, physically open the door and even allow you to inside the building, so to speak?
I was respectful. I asked questions in terms of what was important to them. I don't think I said it in that way. And they saw me consistently showing up at 8 o'clock Monday, 8 o'clock Wednesday, 8 o'clock Friday. Like, oh, she's a person that shows up on time. She's a person that we can trust. And that's how it started, was just doing what I said I would do.
Reliability.
And then when I said, I'm going to come in on Saturday, I'm going to come in on Sunday, I did it.
You did it. Let's talk about that. So I'm in real estate. It's not really a union industry. So I'm not educated. What little I know about unions is you see from the TV, which, who knows what's to be believed. So you're not allowed to work more than 5 days a week.
Correct.
But I can only see the world through my lived experience.
Exactly.
But what if I want to? What if I want to get ahead? What if I want to do more? What if I want to make more? The answer is just no, you're not allowed to.
I didn't ask permission. I just did it.
Yeah.
I knew for certain I couldn't go and get my truck. That was the rule. You cannot take your truck out on your off days.
Why not?
I don't know.
It
was the rule.
I'm sure there's a thoughtful reason. I'm generally curious. Yeah. I'm the curiosity is already.
Yeah, I
hitting
love
me.
it. And I said, all right, well, I am just going to go in with my car, street clothes, put it up, and it'd take me 15, 20 minutes, and then I was on my way. And what happened for me in a really good way is Leo Kiley, who was the president at the time of Frito-Lay, saw this huge spike in a route in Detroit, Michigan.
I was like, what's that?
What's going on there?
Yeah.
Right? Leo's a curious person. He goes,
Can we replicate it?
Let's go do a market tour. Yeah. Let's see what's happening. Let's see what he's doing out there.
Oh, yeah. He.
So I was,
Turns out it was
20.
a she.
Yeah, I was like 23 years old and not familiar with the corporate world. So I'm in a store on my knees, putting up the chips on the bottom shelf.
Sure.
And I look up and there are 4 guys in suits.
Yeah, the suits.
And I still don't know if are they with Kroger or are they with Frito-Lay? And so then they introduced themselves. And
was this on a Saturday or Sunday?
No, it was during work day. So it was on a work day. And they introduced me to Leo Kiley and said, we're really interested in
This is the CEO. And
he's the president.
The president. And he's standing in one of your stores.
Yeah. And I'm in a uniform, dirty, sweaty, not looking good.
But making it happen.
Making it happen. And he just said, we're just kind of looking at what's happening in this marketplace where their sales would be so high here. He goes, what's happening? What's different about the consumer? And I knew I was like in a quagmire because I wanted to tell the truth, but I didn't want to get written up by the union.
Yeah.
So I just made up something. I don't remember what it was. It's like, this.
I think we call that a white lie.
It was like this. Yeah. I said, I think it's the way I display because there's a certain pattern you put the chips on the shelf. Next time you go to your store, look how the chips are laced on the shelf. It's an art to put the chips up.
I'm not trying to look at those chips because I'm trying to lose weight and the chips.
Just look at them. Don't be tempted by that. And so I was I was the ultimate lacer, pop and lacer. And when new people would come in on board, they said, you're going to go with Deb because she can pop and lace. And I said, I think it's the way I display it on here. But the truth was, and Leo, I'm sorry that I'm telling you this now, but I was working on Saturday and Sunday to put those chips up.
What do you think he would have said if you pulled him aside and said, like, permission to speak freely, like, not allowed to get in trouble, but this is, he would have been like, hey, good job, but stop
I think
doing
he
it?
probably would have said, good job. Yeah, good job. Because it was, in the end, all about the consumer, but it was also about the store, because the store was increasing their sales. The consumer was getting their chips. And, of course, it helped me get recognized.
All right. Why were you doing this? And I mean this, like, why were you working 7 days a week? Why were you giving up your weekends? It's so many people, everybody, I think there's a song, everybody's working for the weekend.
Yeah.
Why were you giving up your weekends where you weren't going to make more money? You weren't even really allowed to work. Why were you doing that? What was your motivation?
I was 20 and I had a lot of time on my hands.
Yeah.
I was like, what else am I going to do on Saturday and Sundays?
Well, if I may, let me just take the other side. Spend time with your friends. Well, you're not going to watch the Lions. They probably weren't very good, but like
they weren't bad in the 80s.
The Pistons.
The Pistons were amazing. They won 3 in a row.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, go watch the games. Go walk in the park. Get some sleep. Watch a movie. Like all the things I think people do with their weekends if they don't have 4 kids, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if you have 4 kids,
you chose to have 4 kids.
Yeah. But it's soccer and baseball. But no, why didn't you do those things that your peers are probably doing? What do you think makes you different?
It was just like setting a goal to get off that route. And it was a game in a way. It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can I hack the system, so to speak, or how can I do the right things by the consumer and the customer, but then I get the benefit? Well, certainly Frito was benefiting too because their sales were going up. But this sense about it was just like a game in a fun way of, I'm going to beat my numbers. I'm going to beat everybody else in the warehouse.
When it comes to sales, gamification is like, that's a big thing. We do it here, like gamifying sales. People get lost in games and they produce, but you said something like you set a goal to get off this route. So that would be earning a promotion to manager.
Yes.
What was it about being promoted to manager that you thought it would do for you, whether it was a feeling or a lifestyle? Like what was it about being promoted to manager was so much more important to you than it was to the next guy or gal?
Just the desire to lead people, to see what that was about. You go to school, you go to college, you go to graduate school, and it's just like, this is the next step, is to become a manager, become a leader. And then it was like, not so fast. We need you to be a teamster first. And it's just this determination to see if I could do it, and I did it.
And you did it. How long did you do it for?
9 months.
Oh, that was super fast. I don't, maybe you know this, like what is the average time as on a route versus before becoming a manager? 9 months sounds fast.
I think maybe a couple of years, because you have to get your sales up.
Yeah, and you just performed so well. They're like, we got to make her a manager.
She's superstar.
Yeah.
Look what she's doing in 5 days.
Yeah. So let's talk about managing. Now all of a sudden you're managing people. How was that?
It was this.
It's a little different.
It's a little bit different because
Yeah.
you think about it, now managing the route drivers.
Yeah.
So guess what? If they don't show up tomorrow, guess where I am? I'm driving
You're
the
doing
truck
route.
again.
All right.
But this what I learned about having been a route driver and then being a manager is the power of credibility and hard work. You know, one day I was a route driver with them. They saw how hard I worked, and the next day I'm managing them, and they're like, "Wait, she's one of us."
Respect.
The respect
Lead,
and this
lead by example. Lead from the front.
and I knew what they were going through.
Yeah. And you get, there's practical advice in knowing, and then there's also empathy, which is very important. You could empathize the challenges of that role, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What were the biggest challenges of management as opposed to, just being kind of the master of your destiny as the truck, as having a specific route?
I think it was one of going in thinking they should all be like me, right? Right? Even though they didn't know I was working those extra days, but the sense of I wanted them to have the same drive and commitment that I have. And it's just not the case. They have different expectations. They had different ways in which they wanted to lead their life. And so being able to influence them to give me a little bit more and to give me a little bit more. And one of the things that I did that was unique, but probably not appreciated, is I would do ride-alongs. Like, hey, I'm gonna go out on your route with you today. I'm gonna sit with you, right? And so the whole day I'm getting to know them. But I'm also getting to know their patterns and how they do things. And then the opportunity to point out, like, wow, maybe they'd let you leave some back stock, and maybe they would put it up for you. Just you give like small suggestions.
But you can't recommend coming in on the weekend. No, you can't work
on the weekends.
Yeah.
But in the sense of just understanding that everybody has different motivations in life.
God makes everyone different.
And, I didn't realize that at first. Like, I thought everybody should be me. Everyone should be me.
That's, having grown up a chunk of my life in LA, I was pointing to Kobe Bryant. Kobe's struggles. I mean, he won with Shaq, but his struggles when he was on had his own team was his relationships with his teammates, and it was driven by he didn't understand why they didn't care as much as he did, or why they weren't willing to work out at 3:30 in the morning and do 3 practices a day and just train, because basketball and success there was so important to him and to his teammates. It was just something they did. And eventually he won multiple championships by learning to that everybody's different.
Everybody's different.
That's especially for driven people. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it was a hard lesson. And one of the other lessons I learned as a route driver is not everyone is going to like you. So I know, hard to believe, right? Somebody doesn't like me.
Yeah.
Somebody didn't like me. So Hans was the warehouse manager. I have no idea why he didn't like me. I might have crashed a truck or two, but other than that, I don't know why Hans didn't like me. And everybody knew that Hans didn't like me. And one afternoon, it was Friday, we're all checking out, doing our paperwork, and he starts calling my name from the dock. Clary, get out here. Of course, all the other route drivers are rolling their eyes like, you're going to get it.
Yep.
So I walk out there, and he's standing next to a truck, and there's a little crowd that's forming. And he's like, do you see these tires? Look at this. You have ruined these tires. I could fire you right now, for ruining company property. And he was going on. And he says, what do you have to say for yourself? And he was all puffed up. I said, Hans, that's not my truck. The power of a question. If he had asked me before he started yelling at me, hey, is this your truck? Yeah. Is this your truck? And that's when I learned, oh man, the power of a question and how you can lead a different conversation if you know the facts.
Yeah. Getting back to you being a driver and a manager, you kind of get both sides of this, but one of the things we were talking about is really, it's about performance, right? You can tell people what you're about, or you could communicate, hey, these are what I think I'm good at, my skills, but at the end of the day, it's about performance. How did you know that at such a young age, truly, like first 9 months you're a truck driver, and then how did you communicate to the drivers that, it almost doesn't matter how nice you are, how hard you try, those are good things to do, but It's about who performs the best.
Mm-hmm. The way I approached it was as a team, right? So we're District 33, and I would instill in them, like, let's be the best route team in the whole, district. So it was like we're pulling for each other. And every once in a while, Frito would run contests, like what team has the best route averages. And so I approach it not as an individual, but as teamwork and what we could do for each other.
Okay. How long were you in that management role and what came next?
I was a district manager for 2 years, and then I became a regional sales manager.
Regional sales manager.
So now I'm managing the district managers.
Managing the managers.
Yes, now I'm managing managers.
That's even harder.
Even harder.
Yeah.
Because I still wanted them to be like me.
And like I said, God makes everybody different. How did you do that? I'm asking for a friend here.
Yeah. Yeah. It just was about realizing that I wasn't having the type of success that I wanted to have in terms of motivating them.
Mm-hmm.
And because again, why are they not showing up like me every day? Why are they not getting here at 6 a.m, making sure they're talking to their route drivers? It's because, well, they had little kids or their lives were different in the sense of I had to really wrestle with everybody is different and I need to be a different leader for each of them. Just like we were talking earlier about, you have to be a different parent for each one of your child in a way because they're wired different.
Very different.
And the same thing with managing people is really understanding what do they want?
Yeah. Because you can make the argument that they may not want to be more than the regional manager. And so you keep expecting them to do so much more so that they can grow, right? And they're like, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes as a leader, you forget to ask, like, do you even want to grow? Do you even want a promotion? Do you even want more responsibility? Obviously, everybody wants more compensation, but most people would say yes. But sometimes they're like, I like my gig.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's one of accepting it. So there's two parts of that. One is an individual says, this is my life. This is what I want to do. And you say, oh, I get that. Then there's another individual that doesn't have the confidence that they can do it. And that's a different conversation. It's about instilling in them, but it's understanding where are they coming from and what is it that they want.
So talking about, I like my gig. I'm comfortable with them. I don't want to grow anymore. There were people at Frito-Lay at maybe every step. Maybe they're route drivers that were there for 15 years and they're like, I like being a route driver. Or then I think it was district to regional, right? How come you didn't stop at some point and say, hey, I like this, I'm good. Obviously I need to perform and do my job, but no, I'm not. You just kept going. Why do you think you were like that and maybe others aren't?
I think I just saw it as fun in the sense of, what's my next goal? How can I get to that next goal? And it was never about the money. It was all about the accomplishment or achieving something. And it's just, I was determined and I was tenacious, which on the other hand, I probably left a lot of people in my wake in terms of probably not being a nice person when I was, younger.
What's a story, and you don't have to name names, but what's a story that you're comfortable sharing where you look back and you're like, man, I would handle that differently,
I've fired a lot of people,
Firing's hard, if I may, but sometimes people fire themselves. You got to tell them that they're fired, but not all firings are the same. Like there's firings and then there's layoffs. Like,
yeah, certainly if there is, something nefarious or fraudulent, those are easy firing. But I was pretty black and white, in terms of performance. Either hit the number or you were out. In hindsight, it would be, let's have a conversation about what's happening here. And I saw it as a way of recognition by the number of people I fired. Oh, she's not afraid to fire people. She's tenacious in that. And in hindsight, for all those that are out there that I fired, I'm really sorry. We probably could have worked it out.
Yeah, but do you think any of that had to do with the fact you're a woman and you felt that you need to prove you're tougher?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, just sitting here, I was like, oh, I wonder if some of that is, especially in the 80s and 90s, I don't know the exact time frame, but there was probably a stigma like, oh, can a woman be tough enough to be a boss?
Absolutely.
Do you feel like that? And I think you said yes, but that had an effect on how you ultimately acted in some cases?
Absolutely. And I also think you lead the way you're led until you know otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So coming out and going into a union environment, things were black and white. There was a handbook, there was a rule book, there was a path to disciplining
Very
individuals.
binary, yeah.
Yes. And when I left Frito-Lay after 10 years and I went to Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola was not like that. Coca-Cola was a transformational organization. It was one around development and caring about people. Not that Frito-Lay didn't care, but the sense of there was more room for grace and development. And I quickly learned that firing people isn't the way to get recognized here. It's developing people and getting people promoted.
Mm.
And it was a shift because I'd never seen leaders lead that way at Frito-Lay.
Yeah, I might be generalized. Frito-Lay, Michigan, the North, structure and performance and this, and Coca-Cola being Atlanta, Georgia, just it's a different culture, I would say.
Absolutely different culture. And I just learned quickly I needed to lead differently.
I'm going to dive into Coca-Cola in a second, maybe what led to making that switch, but wanted to come back to being a woman in business, in corporate America, as you were rising the ranks in the 80s and 90s. Like, what was it like to be a woman at the time, and how has that changed from today and what you see women in corporate America today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it was, especially in the roles that I took. So I was in operating roles, which was mostly men. So I think that the path I chose was different from other women that may have been going down the HR role or the marketing role, which are all great positions, if you will. But the sense is I kind of took the harder route in terms of being in operating type roles. And I did behave differently because of that. Now I had two brothers, so I was raised in
That helps, yeah.
I knew what it was like to be competitive and
Mm-hmm.
to have to speak up and just be different, to have your voice heard. And so, yeah, it was, challenging in that way. I look back on it with a lot of regret. Again, all those people out there, I'm really sorry. But I shifted and I got better.
And what would you say the biggest difference between that environment or culture or just time versus today? And how has the workplace changed?
So in 2005, I did my dissertation on differences in gender leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So what made a man different than a woman, right? So that's the dissertation. And what I learned in that research was that women discriminate against women more than men do.
Mm.
And this was like in the early 2000s, and I'm sure it was the same in the 80s and the 90s. And I remember when I was asked to start a women in leadership program, I said, the first thing that we're going to share with these high potential women is do no harm, right? If we can't lift each other up, please just don't tear each other down. Yeah. And my leader at the time was a male, and he's like, I don't think that's true. And I go, well, here's the data. And now here's my experience. And so that was just the path of getting women on, all right, I'm not going to be mean to other women.
Yeah.
And when you ask African-American women, like who's the villain, it's white women, right? And so I do think that there has been a significant change. There is this awareness around that now. It's very different. I remember when I was at Coca-Cola in the 90s, and I was in this special program for high potentials, and I met with one of the most senior women there, and I was getting coached by her, and I said, who else should I be connecting with? What other women should I be connecting with? And she mentioned a woman's name, and she said, that's not a woman to be connected to. And I said, why is that? I mean, she's like senior vice president. She goes, she looks like us, but acts like them. I'd never heard that before, meaning she has that more male tendencies and is going to align with men before she's going to support women. Uh-huh. That was a powerful lesson for me.
Wow.
And at that moment I said, I want to be the woman that supports other women.
Yeah. And how'd you do that?
In that moment I shifted.
Yeah.
and said it's if I can't lift him up, I'm just not going to say anything at all, right?
Sure.
Like your mama said, right? If you can't say something nice about something, don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
In the sense of just reflecting on my experience with women to that point. You know, remember in the 80s and 90s, usually only one woman at the top. Everybody else was fighting to get there. It's
Yeah.
different now,
Yeah.
where we really do support each other so that everybody can get there. Make room for everybody.
Sure. What led to the company change from Frito-Lay to Coca-Cola? Was it just opportunity or something else?
Oh no, it was something else.
A bag of money?
No, it wasn't even that.
What was it?
So I was promoted into this role it was like a developmental assignment. They said, we want you to move from operations into marketing. So we
Mhm.
want you to expand your knowledge about how the organization works. So I moved from Detroit to Princeton, New Jersey, and I was in this special program of marketing.
Was that where like corporate was or something?
No, it was where the regional office was
Understood.
in Princeton,
Okay.
New Jersey. Headquarters was in Dallas. And like 6 months in, Roger Enrico from Pepsi took over the division for Frito-Lay, and he let all his direct reports go, like fired them, all the executives. So now I'm in Princeton, New Jersey in a marketing role, and I'm an operator, and new executives come in and they're like, who's she? She doesn't know anything about marketing. They had no idea about my background and the results I'd had in operations and in performance. And, 6, 7 months later, Roger Enrico fired me.
Really?
But she's not a marketer.
And it just, yeah, I mean, it's a big company, and I hate to say at that point, maybe it's like people are just names in an Excel sheet. Was it like, did he call you? Like, how did the firing happen?
I sent the HR person.
Yeah. Did you see it coming?
Well, it was a time this is when, Jack Walsh was letting a lot of people go at GE, and then Roger was trying to right size Frito-Lay. And, I had an inclination. One, I was out of my expertise,
Sure.
and people had left that knew me. And that was that.
Well, 10 years, just see you later.
Poof.
Yeah.
Just like that.
That's tough. How'd that feel?
It was awful. You think about it, I moved my family,
Ugh.
2 daughters. We moved to Princeton. Like, this is amazing. I'm in this special program. Life is so amazing. And then it's like, you're sitting there like, I don't have a job.
What was it like driving home that day?
It was awful. I called my husband, and we were stunned. We were just sitting there stunned. We had no family, no friends in Princeton, New Jersey. And it's like your identity is pulled out from underneath you. I've been a high performer. I've been recognized, and now I'm just see you.
And since that day, you've never had a Frito-Lay chip, have you?
I might have had a time or
Fair
two.
enough. What's a serious question though? What's the lesson that you learned there?
The lesson, because my parents who are now like, oh my gosh, you took a huge risk, and now you don't have a job. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to let this get in my way of taking further risk. Like this is a matter of being a risk taker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I took that. I learned something in marketing. I also learned something about networking and having relationships with more people than outside of your own division.
Sure.
Right. And so the good news is kind of a serendipitous. I was going up to Boston to interview with Reebok. The job was going to be in LA. And they had this horrible storm in Boston. And I ended up getting in a car with another candidate. They go, we're going to put you guys both together since flights were late. So she and I are interviewing for the same job.
Yeah.
And we're now having a conversation.
That's a different type of interview process.
Yeah.
Pretty cutthroat.
And so we both go to the interview. We get back in the car. We're going back. And she said, I really want to introduce you to this recruiter. I think you would really like her. She doesn't work with Reebok, but she works with Coca-Cola and other companies. And the next day, this woman calls me, and that's how I got to Coca-Cola.
Interesting.
Was through that interview with Reebok along the way. And so just a couple months later, I was at Coca-Cola, and I moved to Philadelphia.
Moved to Philly. And
Yeah.
so what was your role at Coke?
in Philadelphia, I was like a general manager, so I had 5 states. So now you think about this. Roger and Rico had gone back to Pepsi. Now I was at Coke.
Oh, you're
I
gonna,
was like,
yeah.
no, right.
I mean,
And
you were passionate.
I was so passionate.
We will destroy Pepsi.
And, yeah. So I spent 5 years in the Philadelphia area, and then I took another role. You know, I'm gonna take another risk. I moved to Atlanta and took a global marketing role with Coca-Cola. My global account was Papa John's Pizza.
Yeah.
My first call on Papa John's Pizza, matter of fact, the truck was loading up my family in Philadelphia, driving to Atlanta. I'm in Louisville, calling on Papa John's, and they tell me, we're switching to Pepsi. And I'm like, can I get the driver on the phone to back up to my house? Because I'm not going to have an account. They're going to Pepsi.
Yeah.
And who did I think about? Roger Enrico.
Yeah, I was
like,
gonna
he's not
say.
taking my account.
No. So what'd you do?
And so I said, let me gather some information. I said, can you give me 3 months before you make a decision? And they said, all right. And so I started calling all the franchisees of Papa John's and asking them what was wrong. And with service, pricing, whatever it might be. So I go back 3 months later, I'm talking to the CEO of Papa John's, we're in their boardroom. And I said this, I said, I got the data. You guys are right. We suck. I go, can you give me another 3 months to make a change? They gave me another 3 months. And this is where I learned my next lesson is I thought, how can I convince these Papa John's franchisees that Coke cares about them and that we're going to make a change? I mean, if they hear it from me, like, who am I? I'm the new person. Who am I? So I said, wouldn't it be amazing if the president of the Coca-Cola company would shoot a video? And this was back in the time when you had those eight tracks.
Yeah.
And I go, I'm going to send them to every franchisee, which were hundreds, with Jack Stahl talking about how important they are, right? So I'm still young in my career. Maybe I don't know better, but I pick up the phone and I call Jack Stahl's office. And I'm thinking I'm going to get his admin, but it was early in the morning and Jack answered.
That's this little real estate brokerage secret. If you call at 7:30 or 8, the EA is not there. And sometimes they answer.
Jack answered.
Yeah.
I said, Jack, you don't know me, but I manage Papa John's Pizza, which is the fastest growing chain in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I said it like that, which was true. And I said, we've got a problem. Would you be willing to shoot a 5-minute video? I will write it. We'll have it on a teleprompter. You'll do it in the studio here. And he's like, yeah. I said, let me call the studio and see when we can get the time. I'll call you back. And so Jack cut this video. We sent this all out. And I got in so much trouble.
For going like around people, so to speak.
My boss and his boss and his boss.
A lot of bosses.
They're like, who is she to call Jack Stahl? And I'm like, wait, I saved the account.
Yeah.
No, but
they
you
should
went
have been
around.
happy, but
They were not happy about that. But here's another story. So because of that incident, I decided I'm leaving Coke. I can't work for this situation. And so I left. 25 years later, I'm writing this book, Curiosity Curve.
Yeah.
And like, who meant something to me? It was Jack Stahl. I hadn't talked to him in 25 years. He had left Coke, went on to be the CEO of Revlon. And so I tracked him down through somebody to somebody. I didn't even know if he would remember me. And I got his email. And within minutes, he said, I remember you. It would be my pleasure.
That's very cool.
And so it's just so special that somebody, he meant something in the sense of he took the call, he answered the call.
Yeah.
And he did what he knew was best to save the client.
And it made a difference.
It made a difference.
What'd you do after Coke?
So I actually went to work for Papa John's Pizza.
Okay.
So my client hired me and I was the global vice president of marketing for Papa John's.
And how long were you there?
I was there a year and then he fired me.
Jeez. All right, you didn't get fired from Coca-Cola, so.
No, I did not. I did not.
Gracefully exited. Why'd he fire you?
So it's an interesting story. So the reason I went to Papa John's is because they said they were wanting to bring in executives that could help them put a structure in place. They were now $1 billion brand, fastest growing chain in the world, and they needed structures and systems to.
With a lot of franchisees, it's probably, you got to create consistency.
Yes. And John Schnatter was the CEO at the time. He said, with your expertise and your corporate experience, you would be perfect to help us really get on track. And so just a bunch of wild stories. But one day he fired 6 of us in one day, 6 of his executive team.
And you were part of that?
I was part of that.
What was that conversation like?
Well, again, who do they send?
The HR?
The HR person.
Man.
So now I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. I know nobody. And my daughters are like, Mom, you promised us we would not move again. We're now in high school. That's a promise. Well, I called Jack Stahl and said, I need a job. Can you hire me back? And they're like, absolutely. And then my daughter reminded me, Mom, you made a promise. We were not going to move. Yeah. This was long before virtual work or and I didn't want to be separated from my family. And it was like, I can't break this promise to them. Even though as much as I want to go back to Coke, I can't break this promise. So I was mentioning to you that both my daughters were fast pitch pitchers, and I was behind the backstop at one of their games and watching the pitches come in, pondering my life.
Just yelling at the ump, just working it.
No, I was pretty good about not yelling at the umps, because what were they making? Minimum wage or whatever?
I'll tell you, I made $12 for the bags, 22 for home plate.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, but I'm
non-inflation adjusted today, it would probably be closer to 30, 40, but yeah, it's not
worth
it's not glamorous.
Parents yelling at them. But I didn't want to embarrass my kids. But I'm sitting behind the backstop, and the headmaster of the school comes up to me and says, "What is this? I hear you're leaving." I said, "Yeah, I got fired. I'm going to go back to Coca-Cola in Atlanta. I don't really want to do it, but it's." And he says, "I don't want you to make a decision until tomorrow. I'm going to have somebody from Jack Daniels call you." And I thought, oh, he's being really nice. Like, who does he know at Jack Daniels, right? The next day, the founder, CEO of Jack Daniels calls me. I go in, interview. Shortly thereafter, I'm their VP of strategy in the wine division. That's how I sold it to my parents. Like, I'm working for the wine division.
Not the liquor.
I'm not working for the liquor division.
Yeah.
And so
that's a blessing, because Louisville, beautiful little city, but not a ton of big career opportunities. So
absolutely
very fortuitous.
Yep.
What was the toughest moment in your career? Like, where you really were like, I don't know if it's overcoming adversity, but where you like, it just questioned just your entire pursuit of what you were.
I think it was getting fired the second time. Because you've heard my story so far is I'm a performer.
Yeah.
I show up, I work hard. And then when things happen, that was the second time it happened. It was like, now I got to go home and tell my husband, like, we fired again. And again, not knowing anyone, not having a network. And it was pretty scary. Now I have girls in high school getting ready to go to college. It was a little frightening, and I was a little beat down. Like, it was a rough go. I could write a whole book on that year at Papa John's in terms of just crazy stuff that happened.
Well, your first book's doing so well, maybe you should, just stay on a heater. Did your husband work?
No, he stayed home.
Stayed home, because I was going to ask, and this is still a good question then. What's it like to be a working mom? You have two kids.
Yeah.
And they had to move, there's that, but just, you had to go to work every day, and that's not necessarily the experience all moms have. Like, how did you deal with that?
I think it was fortunate in the sense that when my husband stayed home, so there was a lot of flexibility. I always knew that they were getting to school, they were getting picked up. He was coaching their ball games or their teams. But it was also one of, when you're in sales or you're in senior level roles, you have flexibility. You cannot schedule a meeting at 4:00 so you can get to a ball game. And so I found that flexibility. The downside was I did a lot of traveling.
Yeah. Especially before the Zoom calls.
Yeah, absolutely. Before all of that. But I felt good about I made the things that were important, that things that were important to them. I made sure that I showed up for that.
And this is, I think, true to this day, being a working mom versus stay at home, but especially back then, it was much less common.
Mm-hmm.
And so were there times that you were questioning your career pursuits in lieu of doing what probably a lot of other moms did at the time, certainly more than today, being a full-time stay-at-home?
Yeah, absolutely. I remembered I had 2 young children. Like they were 3 and 1. And I just didn't know how I was going to keep up with the pace. And I was at Frito-Lay, and the senior executive came in. She was a woman, and she looked so pretty. She had she didn't have throw up like on her jacket like I did. And she's like,
Hair curled.
she was like all put together. She just got off first class. And I knew she had children. And they asked me to drive her to the airport. And I said to her, can I ask for some advice? I go, how do you do it? She said 2 words, get help.
Staff up.
And, I was making okay money, but from there on, I just spent every discretionary dollar I had in terms of, I had a housekeeper, then I hired a nanny, and I was barely making the mortgage, but I was like so relieved I knew my house was taken care of, my kids were taken care of. And it's just like, get help was the best advice I've ever had.
And my wife and I got that after a second. We got rocked by the second. Like, just, you're in man-to-man, there's no breaks. And by the third, it was like, you got to staff up. And,
Bless you.
and it changed everything. It's like a company. Like, you get a big company, the CEO can't be putting paper in the printer. Like a family.
Yeah.
How was Jack Daniels?
It was an interesting transition because I'd worked for Fortune 40 companies. And then when I went to Jack Daniels, it was at that time only about $5 billion. So a huge, a huge shift in terms of, resources and revenue and that type of thing. But the other thing that was interesting was, it was publicly traded, but it was still family controlled and run. And that was a nuance I hadn't expected. I just came
It's
from
a different dynamic,
I just worked for, Fortune 40 companies. Then I went to an entrepreneur, and all of that entailed. Now I go to a family-run organization, and it's just like I couldn't put the words on what was different about it. And that's when I decided to go back to school. And I went back to get my doctorate in leader development in org design, and they paid for it. They were amazing because I was just so fascinated with human behavior. Like maybe I could understand human behavior. Maybe I could understand my own behavior and how I was feeling about things and how I could be a great leader.
Where'd you go back to school, sir?
George Washington in DC.
Yeah, great school,
A great school. So what I did is on Thursday night, once a month, I'd fly to DC, 12 hours Friday, 12 hours Saturday class.
12-hour class?
12-hour classes. They gave you lunch. They gave you breaks.
That sounds terrible.
12 and 12. And then I took the 6 a.m. flight home I'd get home before my kids got up, from Saturday night.
I'd just try and make a donation, see if they could send that doctorate in the mail. Sounds easier.
But is this?
Did you learn what you hope to learn?
Absolutely. First off, I go into this thinking, I know everything.
Sure.
Like, what could they teach me?
Yeah.
And it was pretty wild, just in terms of theory. And with every theory, there is a practice. And that's one of the things I learned. But going back to this whole story about being the underdog, and we went through as a cohort, so you had 30 students that went through all 3 years together. And I was sitting in that room on the first day, and people are going, I'm the CEO of Booz Allen. I work for the Defense Department. And I'm thinking, I'm the dumbest person in this room. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up.
It's good. You want to be, I don't know if you're the dumbest, but maybe the least accomplished or the least senior, that you're going to learn the most.
So I also learned that you did things in teams, in projects. So you'd get together in groups of 2s or 3s. So people would choose you to be on their team. And I'm like, here we go. I'm not going to be chosen to be on one of these academic teams. And so a hack. I flew in on Thursday mornings, and I would spend the whole day with I think they call media librarian, and I learned to be a researcher. And nobody else in that room knew how to research. Guess who they picked on their team?
Yeah, you.
Me.
You did the dirty work.
Because I never told anybody I'm flying in on Thursdays to do and I just became accomplished at research.
You mentioned earlier, the game, kind of motivations. Why were you pushing at this stage in your life, later in your life, later in your career, I should say? How had your motivations evolved or changed? Like what was really driving you at this point that maybe was different than 10, 15, 20 years before that?
I think it comes down to just learning. Like I love to learn. I love to be challenged and pushed in new ways. And I think that that's probably what it boils down to. Because over the last 2 years being an entrepreneur, of course, I thought it would be a breeze. I was going to be walking the park because after all, I've run large P&Ls. It's incredibly difficult to be an entrepreneur. And I just kept telling myself, well, you're learning all new skills. These are all new skills. When I would say, get the attorney on the line, like that's you. Get the account, that's you.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of having to relearn things. So I think it's just the quest for learning.
I've noticed, what are we? We're close to 100 episodes, right? 98? Yeah. I've noticed a common theme. This isn't for everyone, but it's a lot, is a lot of the driver being, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome is kind of how a lot of people frame it. And I get that as well. The feeling of not being good enough. Was that ever a driver? Were those ever drivers and motivations? Like you were trying to prove something to someone or prove something to yourself?
I think there's the nuance for me was I felt or knew that I was not the best and I accepted it, but it just meant that I was going to work harder, but not that ever that I wanted to say, I'm number one. This is amazing. I finally got to the top of the summit, but it was more of, this is your lot in life. You just have to work harder than everybody else. And so go get after it.
Hmm.
I didn't feel like I was a victim or poor me. It was like, this is you, go get it.
And and again, earlier you touched on why that may have been kind of how you viewed things, some of it dealing with athletics and, always being good, but these are my words. Like I was always good, but I never was great. It was always second or something. Was that still the primary driver? Were there other factors that led to this feeling of like, hey, this is my lot in life, so I just have to outwork everybody?
I think it's just it feels good to achieve.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, there's a satisfaction there.
You set a goal and you hit it.
You go and get your doctorate. Yeah.
Yep.
What comes next?
So I go back to Jack Daniels, who were very gracious in funding this. I was very, very appreciative of that. And I said, I got the most amazing idea. Let's start a leadership academy here. This is so amazing. You funded it. I've got the education. Let's go do this. And they were very gracious, but it's the family is in succession to take over the senior roles. I didn't quite understand that. And so it was like, we want our people to be strong, but we're not going to invest in leader development in that way.
Yeah.
And so I was serving on a board and there was an executive from Humana, a healthcare company in Louisville. And they said, we want to stand up a leadership institute. With your business background, your academic background, you'd be perfect. And I go, no way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to healthcare. I mean, look at me. I'm chips, I'm soft drinks, I'm pizza, I'm liquor.
All the good stuff.
I'm like, I don't know anything about healthcare.
Yeah, chips, soft drinks, liquor. Let's go.
I mean, and I like to be liked. Everybody invites me to parties because I'm bringing the goods.
Well, the chips, the soft drinks, and the liquor lead to healthcare needs.
Exactly.
It's full circle there, you see?
So I thought, I have an opportunity to eat, to alleviate all the evils I put out in the world. And so after 9 months of talking to them, I made that decision. And so that's what I did.
How long were you there?
So I spent my first 8 years there running the Leadership Institute. So it was the development of the top 600 leaders in the organization, doing everything from—
How many people total were in the organization? 600 leaders is a lot. 600 people is a lot.
Oh, yeah. It was a $100 billion company. Humana's a $100 billion company. It's huge, 100,000 employees. So we were developing those leaders because Humana was going through a transition from being a health, an insurance payer to actually being a provider. So they moved into the wellness space where they were buying up physician practices and moving into pharmacy and that type of thing. And what really sold me on it, the CEO said that we need leaders to transform our organization. We need people that are coming from consumer goods, that understand consumers. And so that convinced me to go do that. And then after 8 years, the CEO of 30 years retired, and we got a new CEO in. And what do new CEOs do? They bring in their own teams. And so he called me up. I did not get fired. He called me up and said, I'm going to be offboarding and onboarding, and I need a high-performing team. So I want you embedded in my team. So I attended every meeting. I led every meeting. I led every strategy session. We did that. I did that for 8 years until I got the question, the joke, and the puzzle.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm called to go do something else.
Well, I was going to say, so there's a pattern. You like big companies, and then maybe that's your parents' influence. You said, where did they work?
Well, they were blue-collar workers.
Blue-collar workers. Maybe that generation always was like safeties. My mother-in-law and all that, my dad played football, so it doesn't count. But like my mother-in-law, one was a teacher, one worked for the government. It was all about like safety, security, pension, right? Just
absolutely
right down the middle of the fairway type deal. I think you said Fortune 40, right? Frito-Lay, Coca-Cola, Papa John's, big, a little different. I think you also said like, oh, it was a small company, it was just $5 billion. That's a huge company in my eyes.
Sure.
And then back to Humana. Am I saying that right? Back to Humana, 100,000 employees, crazy, you know? And then, you know, a joke, a question, and a puzzle leads to you making a radical change. I mean, radical to go from not just like corporate America, right? Steady jobs and W-2 income and KPIs, but giant companies to effectively being an entrepreneur, right?
Yes. Yes.
I understand there was a joke, a question, and puzzle, but what was it really deep down that like called you to do this? Because most people don't, when they've achieved the success you had, take on the risk of starting something from scratch with effectively no safety net.
Yeah, and you can see, like, I do like to work for big organizations.
Yes, you do.
And when I got let go and didn't have a paycheck, there were panic there.
Yeah.
So I like steady. I'll take some risks, but that was a huge shift. And you know, once I got the data back, and I was just like kind of meditating on the data, not in a deep way, but like,
I was
what
gonna say,
should
is
I
that like
do?
a metaphor, or you actually were like meditating?
No, I was like meditating. I was sitting on my couch, fireplace was on, and I'm like, this is really interesting stuff. And this message I got was, you know, there is pain in the world. There's pain in organizations, and you have the antidote.
Curiosity.
And I'm just like, oh, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I got the call and I answered.
I think, again, generalizing, this can't be true for every entrepreneur, every founder, you know, everyone who goes it alone and starts something the way you did. There is a little irrational confidence there. What changed, if anything, between this irrationally confident person who's like, I'm gonna go do this thing. It's gonna be very risky, it's very entrepreneurial, there's no safety net, there's no Fortune 40. Versus the person who, again, I'm just been listening, it's not that it wasn't necessarily that I thought along your story you came across as not confident, but you're like, look, I'm not gonna be the best, so I just have to outwork people. Did something change, or did you take that same mentality and apply it to your new venture?
I just felt like people needed to know this information, and I was the one to carry it forward. And I also thought, I am so good at running a business. Like, I'm just going to step into this thing.
Can be easy.
And man, many tears, many of like,
ignorance
what
is
am
bliss, right?
I was like, what was I thinking?
What was the low point?
When I had to do my taxes in 2023.
When they don't pull it out of your check
I think
every 2
I
weeks,
cried for 2 weeks. It was so hard. because I hadn't kept, there was this over here and there was this over there. And then, I forgot I got to send out a 1099. And
Wow.
it was really bad.
Welcome to the dark side.
It was dark. Yeah. It was so dark. And I kept asking myself, why are you doing this? And then I said, you're asking the wrong question. Yeah. How do I push through? Or how do I get help? I need an accountant. I need a bookkeeper.
That whole thing.
And I just started hiring people to help me.
I always say that the title founder, everybody's like, oh, so that's a sexy title. Like, hey, you find out things, not necessarily things you think or things you want to know. You find out a lot, especially that first year. Like EPLI insurance, E&O insurance, DNO, payroll services, payroll load, W-2s, 1099s, legal, like it's everything. And when you start a business, you're like, oh, that's gonna be great. I'll just start the business. I'll just focus on the business, but the business is so complicated, operating a business.
So complicated. And I also thought, I'm gonna have to turn people away because they're just gonna be knocking at my door for me to come speak.
Of course.
And it's like crickets.
Doctor.
It's like, wait, I gotta make a call. Hey, Heather, remember we worked together at Humana? It's a sense of like, now I gotta get out and start making the calls.
And you did?
And I did.
Made those cold calls.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Cold calls are a good thing. We celebrate cold calls here. Yeah, cold calls and closings, baby. What was that moment when you knew it was going to work?
It was this year, January.
Yeah.
At Thanksgiving, I'd gone down to Florida and I was just sitting by the pool and I'm thinking, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit. Why am I doing this? This grind is like ridiculous. And I was with my friend Joan and she goes, you quit and you haven't even started yet. I go, I've been doing this for 2 years. She said, no, you haven't. She goes, the first year you did the one woman show. That's very different. Second year, you wrote the book. Okay. You're starting your third year. You're really starting your business. And I'm like, oh man, like I'm just starting. But it gave me this refresh of, oh, she's right. I have been doing other things. I've been doing this by doing that. And in January, I said to myself, I'm not going to make one single call. I'm not going to try to go prospect. I'm going to let it come to me. And if people come, I'm going to keep going. If they don't come, I'm just going to go to Bali or whatever. And I booked more business in January than I did the entire last year.
There you go.
And I'm like, okay, those 2 years of grinding is starting to happen.
A lot of it is seeds you planted 12, 24 months ago starting to sprout. That's how sales is, you know.
Well, people told me it's going to take you 3 years. And I'm like, do you know me? It's going to take me 3 years. It's, man, it's hard.
And then how much does curiosity drive the service you provide at the Clary Group?
It's 100% of what we provide. Well, you think about any consulting practice is about asking questions. Real estate, about asking questions.
Oh, that's the whole game.
And it's like when you do go on a call and you get turned down. I think you had a guest that said he went on 499 calls, but they found out 499 ways that things weren't going to work.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. That's being curious. Every time you make a call, you're getting feedback. When you're getting feedback, you're making adjustments.
What's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you professionally?
So when I was at Papa John's, what did he say he wanted? He wanted a professional organization. He was bringing people in from these big companies. And so we were coming back on a jet from somewhere, and I'm on the jet with the CEO, the COO, and the president, myself, a couple other people. And the CEO turns to me and he says, how's Investor Day coming? I'm like, are you talking to me? Investor Day? When's Investor Day? It's in 2 weeks. And then, I mean, I'm in marketing. The CFO runs Investor Day, right? So then he turns to her and said, how's it going? And she goes, we haven't started on it yet. Now, this is their first ever Investor Day. They've just gone public. It's pretty darn important.
Yeah.
So we work 2 weeks nonstop weekends, everything. We brought in someone professionally to help people prepare and to be able to stand up in front of investors. And the CEO says, I don't want a speaking role. I want them to see my new team. I'm only going to greet them, and then you all are going to do it. We rehearsed. The day comes, the CEO gets up in front of investors and says, welcome. We're so glad you're here. 3 hours later, he was still talking.
Oh.
We're in the back of the room, like, what? And what he was saying was just not rehearsed, not coordinated.
Not helpful.
Yeah. And we break for lunch, and then, I mean, he was so puffed up. Like, this was so
How'd it
amazing.
go?
How did you see? I was like so amazing.
What'd
And
you
we're in
say?
the back huddling, like, we've got another 2 hours with him after lunch. What are we going to do? That was the craziest thing that ever happened to me.
Man, I hope I haven't done that. Like, I might have gone 30 minutes. I hope I haven't gone 3 hours.
3 hours.
Oof, that's brutal.
At one point, they asked him a question, and
Were there slides?
no slides. We had a white paper in front of the room, and he drew a picture of a cow with udders, and told a story about that. And you can imagine what that was about.
Better hope he keeps making good pizza. What do you, I mean, you've been in so many different places and probably influenced a lot of people. You know, you joked about some of the people you wish you could go back and, manage differently, but I'm sure for every one of those stories, there's 100 of positive influence. Like when you look back, at least at your corporate career, what do you hope your legacy is?
So a couple of days ago, I was downtown Louisville for a meeting, and then I had another meeting that was 2 hours different. So I said, what am I going to do for 2 hours? I don't want to drive all the way back, come back. So I said, I'm going to go into this hotel, have a coffee, do a little work. Well, I go into that hotel, and Humana was having to have a leader meeting, just coincidentally. And my old admin was there. She comes out, and then she rustled up a couple other people. You're not going to believe who's here. It's Deb. And, I chatted with them, and I walked away, and then I came back, and the other two men had left. And she goes, you know what he just said? The guy and Michael. And I said, what? And he said, I'm going to cancel my therapist appointment because I've seen Deb now. That meant everything to me. Is like just the joy of seeing me in terms of the impact I had on his career and what he did. And I'm like, man, I hope that just sums up my career, that people say, I don't have to go see my therapist because I've seen Deb.
Yeah. And I think if I had to guess, people see a therapist to feel better, it's cathartic, and a lot of ideally good things. And that's probably a reflection of how you make people feel, which is great. How would you describe, in terms of your approach, what would you describe the Matthews mentality? What would you describe your mentality?
I would, at the risk of, I'm curious in the sense of, I deeply want to understand other people in terms of what's important to them and what motivates them.
At what point, where is the line between being curious, which is asking questions, as a leader especially, ask questions, be curious, and then there's a line and say, okay, now I need to be decisive. The time for questions is over, the time for curiosity over, and the time for execution and action is now.
Yeah, that's why the book is called The Curiosity Curve.
There you go.
So there is an optimal amount of curiosity that organizations need to have. So you think about it, if you are too curious, nothing gets done. But if you're not curious enough, you're not being innovative. And so in the book, we give a framework for how to balance that level of curiosity. And when we look at curiosity, there are 4 drivers, and you took the assessment. So the 4 drivers are exploration, in terms of really looking outside and seeing new ways of doing things, openness to new ideas. So when someone comes to you and says, I got an idea. And the other one is inspirational creativity. Are you looking outside your industry to pull in new information? And the last one is focused engagement, which means we've made a decision and now we're moving.
And these are all things you learned both through your life experience and your formal education.
This came out of the research for the book. When we,
The MIT, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
under really, first off, it was, is it worth exploring in terms of, does curiosity move performance? And then when we understood that, then it was one of, or how do we measure it? What makes up the components of curiosity? And those are those 4 factors.
Well, hopefully everyone listening has developed curiosity about the book, The Curiosity Curve. And you can buy it on Amazon and at your local bookstore. I'm sure I'll see it in the airport bookstore if it's not there already. For everyone listening, be sure to connect with Dr. Debra Clary on LinkedIn and learn more about the Clary Group, where she helps leaders unlock curiosity, strengthen culture, and drive meaningful transformation. You can also visit DebraClary.com to explore her work and her book, The Curiosity Curve, on Amazon. If you found value in this episode, don't forget to follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Just search Kyle Matthews CEO and catch more inspiring conversations on the Matthews Mentality Podcast, wherever you listen. Debra, this is great. Thanks for coming down.
My pleasure.
Congratulations on all your success and the new venture. You know, it's I don't know if I've had a guest yet who had accomplished so much in a traditional corporate pursuit and then pivots to the most entrepreneurial thing you can do. And it seems like you're doing great, and this is only going to further help. So again, thank you. This has been a blessing.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Deb.